Over a decade ago, I made my first attempt at YouTube success as an awkward teenager with a show I called Archive Binge. It was a blatant attempt to cash in on the trend of internet review shows which were popular at the time, like the Angry Video Game Nerd, the Nostalgia Critic, and the Spoonie Experiment. I had zero confidence in myself and tried desperately to create a voice for myself that wasn't my own. Not to mention that because I gave my older brother zero explanation on what clips to use where, my video on Vampire the Masquerade Bloodline spoils one of the final bosses with zero warning. It's a time in my life that I look back on with justified embarrassment. Despite that, I've never been able to bring myself to take the old channel down, even if it has been very tempting to do so at times. I want it to stay there as a reminder to do better. The videos I do now may not be top-notch stuff, but I think they're a hell of a lot better than my slapdash attempts to get noticed by Channel Awesome. In hindsight, it's probably a good thing I failed. So what does any of this have to do with today's game? Simple. It's a suggestion that I never got around to all those years ago. One of the few viewers I got back then suggested this obscure gem from the legendary developer Looking Glass, and it's bothered me for 12 years that I never did make a video about it. It's time for me to finally get this monkey off my back. This is Terra Strike Force Centauri. Released in 1996 as part of Looking Glass's attempt to branch out into self-publishing, Terra can be summed up as what happens when you cross Rainbow Six with Starship Troopers.
Excuse me!
Look, just pretend the Rainbow Six games existed in 96 so my analogy works. You lead a Special Forces squad of up to 3 other teammates in Space Marine power armor on various missions where a lack of caution can get you overwhelmed and killed in seconds. I'm kind of surprised that this is one of, if not the only tactical shooter to center around infantry squads and power armor. You'd think with how much military sci-fi fans love their realism, there would be more games like this, particularly in the 90s when mecha games were all the rage. Some indie studios should get on that. There's an untapped market here. Regardless of my thoughts on Terra itself, there aren't enough shooters with suits of power armor or mecha of any kind. But enough of my love for badass suits of power armor and giant robots. Let's set the scene. It's the 24th century and humanity has colonized the Alpha Centauri system. Fortunately, Sid Meier's predictions of brain-melting psychic death worms proved false. Instead, all colonists have to contend with are pirates, interclan squabbles, and the ever-encroaching threat of the ambitious Earth hegemony, whose lust for conquest already cost them their previous homes on Jupiter's moons. I think I might prefer the brainworms after all. That's just the basics, but there is a ton of background info on the setting for the curious player to pore through. Historical events that led to the founding of the Centauri colonies, details on all of the 12 clans that make up said colonies, and even individual profiles on your squad mates. I shouldn't be surprised considering that putting love into even these small little details was Looking Glass's bread and butter, but it is still impressive. At the start of the game, increased pirate activity has forced the Centauri Council to create a new strike force comprised of members of all 12 clans in order to deal with the threat. That includes your character, Nicola Ap Io, in all his cheesy FMV glory. Yep, this is part of that weird time in gaming history where putting low-res live-action cutscenes in a game was seen as the pinnacle of AAA gaming. I don't get it either, but at least we get plenty of entertaining footage of actors in Party City costumes doing the best they can in front of a green screen. If it seems like I'm going easy on Looking Glass for this, it's because I am. According to this Rock Paper Shotgun article I came across in my research, marketing forced the team to include FMV after seeing the success of Wing Commander 3. Of course, Wing Commander 3 had the budget to afford the likes of Mark Hamill, Malcolm McDowell, and John Rhys-Davies to anchor the live-action sequences, while Terra had the budget for... let me see here. Nobody. Oh wait, IMDb says this guy played Ganon in the CDI games.
You must...
You know what, fuck it, I'm not gonna make fun of the man for that. He was an actor getting work and did a solid job with the little screen time he got in Terra. Dude's still getting work to this day. He even played the villain of the week on an episode of The Orville last year. So give Mark Berry here some appreciation, damn it. As if the non-existent budget wasn't a tough enough hill to climb for the Terra team, they were forced to do the filming in-house. I shouldn't need to explain how game development and filmmaking are generally two different skill sets. I've always wondered how a studio that made iconic titles like Ultima Underworld, System Shock, and Thief could have still gone belly up. But I can't help but suspect that a brain-dead marketing department had a hand in it. The trailer they did for the game certainly doesn't help.
Welcome to Terra, Strike Force Centauri. A full-scale, totally immersive combat game experience. This is not for beginners. If you lack the quick reflexes and mental agility that this game requires, please seek alternative entertainment.
I like Hello Kitty on an adventure a lot more than this stuff.
We repeat, this is not for beginners.
Ah yes, this isn't a baby game for babies. You can't simply brute force your way through. Guess who beat the game while never scouting ahead and approaching every combat encounter like he was playing a normal FPS?
Now that is danger! Yes, sir, Bob.
Take that, marketing execs from nearly 30 years ago. Okay, so it wasn't exactly that simple. I got killed a lot doing that. Particularly because controlling your suit of powered battle armor, PBA for short, isn't quite as simple as the WASD setup mouse and keyboard users are used to today. While Terra Nova, thankfully, still uses that side of the keyboard, you're given the much more difficult setup of W being run forward, A and D being turning left and right, and S for walking forward. What makes you backpedal then? X. You press X. At least they bound strafe to Z and C instead of making me hold down another button before pressing look left or look right to strafe. But that's a simple fix, right? Just open up the DOSBox keybinds, swap some bindings around, and boom, you've got modern FPS controls. Yes and no. See, there's no mouse look in Terra Nova. Wait! Come back! It's not as bad as it sounds. Since you're in a suit of battle-ready armor... Oh right, that's something else.
Battle-ready armor on!
Since you're in a suit of powered battle armor, the interface is designed to feel more like you're piloting a mech rather than controlling a person. Your mouse can be used to select things in the HUD if you're like me and easily forget certain hotkeys. And thanks to being able to lock onto enemies with a click of the right mouse button, the reduced view field doesn't take away too much of your ability to aim. Though in some firefights I did find myself losing track of where my crosshair was exactly. Maybe making it a dark green color wasn't the best idea. It would have been nice though if there was a way to increase my view field. You guys can watch this full screen, but I'm having to play this in a window about half the size of my monitor so I can Alt-Tab without my monitor bugging out every time. I guess they just didn't have the time to... How long have I been able to do that? And I'm on mission...
24.
Oh my god, I'm an idiot. So, that makes combat a hell of a lot easier. And I can toggle the other parts of the HUD off and on with Tab in this view. This is why you read the manual before playing older games. Don't be a moron like me, viewers. Speaking of people smarter than me, your AI squad mates. Considering this was back when simply keeping friendly NPCs from not getting hung up on the scenery in a 3D game was a miracle, Looking Glass did a really great job here. For the most part, they can handle themselves well in a firefight with zero micromanagement and rarely ever run into your firing line. Though if you're so inclined, you do have a large swath of orders you can issue to either individual squad mates or the whole squad at once. The fact that I could count on my squad to save my ass when I took a step too far and alerted the horde was invaluable. Though they aren't invincible and can be taken out if you're careless. I've read that the ones not featured in the story cutscenes can die permanently, but I somehow lucked out in that front and my squad's only loss was the one forced on me by the story. In fact, the one dying the most was me. Holy shit, that's a brutal death animation. 90s PC gaming was a wild time. As you progress, you're given a big arsenal of weaponry to play around with. From weapons that run off your suit's energy like your basic pew-pew lasers and its short-range cousin, super powerful blam-blam lasers, to kinetic weapons with their own ammo count like the weakest railgun in gaming history, a decent grenade launcher, and my personal favorite, the MB launcher. High-yield explosive death that can hit a target nearly 2 football fields away, specifically made by Centauri researchers to fuck the hedgehog shit up. I love that the writers bothered to come up with a derogatory nickname for hegemony forces. Really helps sell the military vibe they're going for. Unfortunately, most of the best writing is hidden away in world-building touches like that and in the backstory. For better or worse, Terra Nova is structured like a military shooter. You jump from mission to mission executing your orders, occasionally attempting bonus objectives, and you get a performance report at the debrief. The vast majority of storytelling happens in news reports on your computer and in the briefing cutscenes before missions. Anyone who's played the original Medal of Honor games will recognize this structure, which is interesting since this predates Medal of Honor. It's actually kind of weird how little genuine story progression is featured in most of these FMV cutscenes. Every now and then there's some real story included, but plenty of them are just there for the sake of giving the actors something to do. Which is a shame because they raise interesting ideas like Mark Berry here being able to read memories and transfer them to others. It's never properly explained how he can do this, it's just hand-waved away with a cheap, he survived the loss of his last squad and that gave him psychic powers, and because it requires consent on the part of whoever's mind he's reading, all it's good for is exposition and checking if someone's telling the truth. Another squad mate had her vocal cords sliced out as a teenager by the pirates, but there's never any payoff with her confronting those responsible. That tragic backstory winds up being there solely to give an excuse for her to have a robotic voice and to show off Mark's powers. There's plenty of soap opera drama that never really gets explored either. For example, Nick's brother Brant is also part of Strike Force Centauri, and he clearly holds some resentment over his younger brother being his superior officer. Outside of a brief fake-out regarding who the traitor working with the hegemony is, nothing comes of it. Maybe this is my inner Star Trek fan making me want to see drama between the team play out, but I couldn't help but feel like there was an opportunity for a good story in here. A story I'm sure they could have fleshed out more had these cutscenes been planned from the start. Marketing? There's also a moment where Nick gets captured by the hegemony, and you'd expect there to be a mission where you play as someone other than him in a rescue operation, but instead it gets resolved in the same cutscene chain. I feel so bad for whichever overworked animator had to work overtime in order to pose the PBAs like that. They tried so hard to make it look like the one in the middle has his hands on his buddy's shoulders. And why did you guys come here in the standard suits? Where's my heavy suit? I need my thick boy!
Damn, boy, he's thick!
Outside of a handful of story missions like this one, the vast majority of the missions in Terra Nova follow a structure of drop here, kill the thing, protect the thing, scout the thing, or wire the thing to blow. The scouting missions suck the most because you're in the weakest PBA, often by yourself, and it's made needlessly harder by the low draw distance for enemies. You are given a detector which you shoot like a grenade, but one bit of bad timing and they've instantly seen you. This one isn't on my stubborn refusal to use my drones either. I tested them out of curiosity, and enemies spot the drone at about the same range they see you. You can zoom in your view to compensate for the draw distance, but that also decreases your peripheral vision. I wound up resorting to indiscriminately firing those detectors while I clung to the edge of the map. It wasn't fun, but it worked. To make up for that headache, the standard missions are a lot more fun. The maps are absolutely massive for the time, giving you plenty of angles of approach. I chose to follow the teachings of Obi-Wan Kenobi and kept to the high ground whenever I could. Pirates and hogs go boom. That freedom of approach includes being able to customize your entire squad's loadout pre-mission and, outside of missions that require specific members, even swap the squad mates themselves out. Want to throw caution to the wind and fill your squad with weapons and demolitions experts kitted out in heavy PBAs? Go right ahead! Couple that with the open-ended missions and I can easily see this being filled to the brim with replay value for players more creative and strategic than myself. id Software ruined my brain as a child. I'm sorry. Terra Nova Strike Force Centauri is a game I'm surprised gets so little mention these days, especially with the beloved developer responsible for it. There are parts that are definitely of their time, but there's also plenty here to call this a game ahead of its time. Predating both the military shooter boom brought about by Medal of Honor, as well as tactical shooters like Rainbow Six, both of them by years. I can't prove that Terra Nova was a huge inspiration to two games that spawned massive franchises, but I have a sneaking suspicion that both DreamWorks Interactive and Red Storm Entertainment were taking plenty of notes.
Write that down, write that down!
It's too bad that this innovation didn't translate into sales. Its market failure would mark a turning point in Looking Glass's Golden Touch, and they would never recover financially from the combined failures of this and British Open Championship Golf?
And it just might. No, and it didn't drop.
Huh. The more you know. Looking Glass ceased their self-publishing dreams and returned to working with other publishers before sadly folding in 2000, a mere 2 months after the release of Thief 2. I'd like to imagine that there's a world out there where Terra Nova was the success it deserved to be, and Looking Glass were still around today. Back in the real world, we're still fortunate enough to have this game readily available in digital form on both Steam and GOG. If you're willing to contend with the occasionally awkward controls, I heartily recommend giving Terra Nova a spin. Well, that's it for today's game. See you next time.